Okay, so great that you have time for this conversation.
Yes.
This is your earlier book, right? It was published in, I should know that, 2001. Yeah. So 14 years ago, you published this one. And now what led to your decision to revert it, to make a second edition?
Well, that went out just before I was retiring from the Monroe Institute. And I thought I thought I understood everything that was going on and I explained it correctly. In that background background video I sent you from IRBA, it's about 45 minutes long, but you'll understand from that I had it all figured out. I knew exactly what was happening, but it's been 20 years and a lot has happened in the world of physics and in my own personal growth and understanding of what's going on. And it's like Charlie Tart once told me is there's a little message you get says, you got to stop, write this down. And so I use that as a way that I was 50 years old when I wrote the first book, and now I'm 75 years old. And so actually 77, I guess. And it's like, I should kind of write down things that I've learned over this period of time. So that's what I did. The idea of being able to share with other people and come to understand or come to know that I understand things differently now. Why the book we just finished was called A Spiritual Memoir. I translated my earlier life, 0 to 50, into being very much a mover and a go-getter. And now I'm like, not so much, that's what's important. So there was a need for me to flush out those thoughts. And it turns out, I think it's really good. It's going to be a very moving book for a lot of people. I was glad to see it come up on Amazon. And this morning, I even tested one of the QR codes. And they work, for goodness sake. So
yeah. So this is the old. It's not an old book. This is the new version. Yes, and as you said, it has QR. Let me find one. It has QR codes in it.
Yes.
Over here, and you can scan them. And there's a corresponding website that holds a lot of background information and audio files. And so in this previous book, we had a CD right here, right? Too.
Yes. You have the CD?
I have it, yeah. I think I have 2 copies of this book.
You want to borrow this one here?
Yeah, I took it out for working with the book.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I had one that I read years ago, and then when we met at the IRVA conference, I had to buy a new one to let you sign it. And this is why I have 2. Yeah, now I have at least 3, if not more. And in putting together the website, I was impressed with your scientific background. 16 articles and papers published, and I did not know that. But the basic message is the same about guidance, right?
Yes.
What changed is the background, the scientific approach, or
if you'll again, I'm sorry to say it this way, but if you'll look, just take a peek at the IRVA document I sent you. Was 12 years ago that was done. And when you watch me up on stage, doing my thing up on stage, it sounds like, boy, you really know a lot of stuff. That's really interesting. But it's been 12 years and there's a whole lot more science there. But
Oh,
when you hear me talk on that IRVA thing, I meant I'm also quite a jokester. So I say, and I don't want to preview too much of it for you so you can experience it, but I'll put this very complex diagram that some PhD in a university came up with how it's working. And I'll say in my talk, and here's a simple explanation for exactly how this works. So the audience is like, what?
yeah.
So
So,
I enjoy that kind
for
of thing.
listeners, Skip is referring to his talk at the IRVA conference 2012. And
Yes.
the video recordings of this talk can be accessed through the IRVA website, through the conference section.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. IRVA lecture 2000. Maybe I link it in when we have this on YouTube. I just put it on the links. Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We have a lot of other videos that we share through the book website,
Yes.
and I hope to have it available for a long time for people to see it. And one of the most impressive things, maybe one of the most basic, but also the most impressive things was what you said about the value of remote viewing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just give a short intro?
Yeah, is that one of the videos? I was just reviewing it here because I'm consolidating all the stuff I was on. I think that might be one of the videos that's in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, yeah, well, the value of remote viewing, and I'll repeat that. Um, there's a couple of versions of that, but people search out remote viewing to try to do different things. One of the things is they can build their ego up and say, look what I can do. I can do this fancy thing. I'm real smart. Another one is that they want to be famous, um, and have people call them and talk to them about, oh my goodness, tell me more about that. Others try to make money with it. The idea of coming up with different schemes, whether it's trading silver futures or I always give the thing of, well, I want to know who's going to be president at the next election. And so you have this other person create an envelope with this symbolizes this candidate and this symbols another candidate. And the guy makes two different totally pictures. He might have a picture of a giraffe and the other one is a picture of a desert or something as different as you can get. And the idea being is if he gets a body of remote viewers to describe the draft, and then he says, aha, look, here's the winner of the presidency right there, because everybody's talking about the draft. It's called associative remote viewing, to associate the target you're examining with another event, whether it be money or
Yeah.
events that you're interested in
Any kind of
learning
binary
about.
question. Yeah.
Okay. And other people, there used to be a thing in the US where lost children were put on milk cartons that you would buy to try to advertise. If you see this person on the milk carton, let us know. And so there are people trying to do that, and you ought to go out and you ought to try to find this person with your remote viewing magic. And that would be a great thing to do. It turns out that those aren't, quote, the important things about remote viewing. In my perspective, I look at it in the concept of going to, high school or college and you're studying all these things and the teachers tell you, well, if you're going to do good and get a job and you need to learn this that I'm teaching you right now, and you need to learn phase 2 of that and phase 3 of that, and that's going to get you a good job and that's success in life. And I'm like, well, I didn't get that job anyway. I wound up working in the movie theater for such and such. I think that if you look at somebody on the scale of a really good remote viewer, I use in my explanations, if you look at Joe McMoneagle and you can remote view anywhere and anywhen very successfully, repeatedly, over and over again, what does that say about who you are? If Joe can do this, who are we? Aren't we part of this greater understanding of everywhere and every when? Finding that out about yourself. I'm that too. This really isn't the me. That's the me, because I am everywhere, every when. And I think that's the value of remote viewing and all these people that are trying. It's wonderful to see all this happening and blossoming out now with people lots of questions. Well, how about this and how about that? And that's a good thing you ask that question. What considerations brought you to that? And I try not to say to people, well, that's the wrong way. This is not good. You have, they need to find out for themselves who they really are.
Yeah, and this brings me to the science part and on remote viewing and the operational part. Even if you actually were on the operational side, on the pointy end of the spear, right? Paul wrote, it is tempting to think that if Skip hadn't been in the right place at the right time, remote viewing as an operational intelligence discipline might have never been tried. So this was your part or your contribution to remote viewing to bring it into use or utilize it, but still,
that's a question that I understand why people present that and why Paul writes, he was on the pointy end of the stick, and if he hadn't done it, it wouldn't have gotten done. And I'm now 77 years old, and I'm here to tell you, arrangements are made. It isn't.
This is what your story shows, right? So this being guided, how the events just occurred. How you found these papers in the drawer. And,
arrangements are made.
Arrangements are made. And I guess when you learn to look for these coincidences, you see a lot more of them in your life. Did you, would you think that the experience of being guided increased over time? Or it's just a discovery and then it is what it is?
I wrote about this hard to know if I wrote about it or something I talk about. You would know that. It's about paying attention to the guidance or being aware of the guidance. Being aware that, wait a minute, I was told that was going to happen. And there are funny instances where I was first flying out to Stanford Research Institute to talk with the lawyers, and talk with the scientists out there. And I was sitting in the back of the plane, so I'm talking to myself and asking, well, how about this and how about that? And this voice spoke to me and said, what do you think is happening right now? And I'm like, uh-oh, even in an airplane, I can't get away from that guidance. And I looked around, did anybody hear me say that? It's kind of an interesting thing. Yes, I've mentioned that I was born into a family that brought me up in these ways of thinking about what's going on in life. I wasn't brought up in a family that, you have to be the best tennis player. You ought to go to get tennis more because you're going to get famous and make a lot of money if you can just play tennis. And it wasn't about that in my family. It was about thinking about other things, given experiences in other things. And so the further I went along in the years and the further information arranged, for me, it seemed like a long time going that way in time to accumulate these numbers of years. But there's no space and time. So the real me always knew all of these things. It's just like you're waiting around for them to get to this point.
Mhm.
My wife and I have this set of three little angels on top of a cabinet, and we look at them and tease ourselves about they're looking down at us saying, well, what are they going to do now? So,
Okay, ready for the next chapter? So,
yes.
yeah, but even if we look at the order of events, so you had this interest in, yeah, surveillance issues through mental means, and then you had you thought, I would like to be in a place where I can work with it or learn more about it. Is even this interest probably induced through things that have already happened if you don't see time as a linear um, event, because all is in one place at the same time. So you experience, okay, I had this idea, and then this happened, and then this happened, and maybe it's just one package.
Yes, yes, it is in one packet. For us to talk about it or for me to write about it, it seems to have to be linear.
Yeah.
But it didn't really. If
Yeah.
we are part of the overview, then technically we know all of this. And, people get to a point where they're arguing, well, what's the purpose then? And I used to say, hey, he's when I was a kid, this is like Disneyland and you can do lots of things here. And then you go home,
Yeah, so the experience of guidance is tied to the experience of time, experience of linear events. Guidance is a form of expression of these all in one. In our world where we perceive time.
This is the only place sitting here on Earth that gets to perceive time. And so it's kind of a joke for everything else in the universe. But I remember this is something I want to talk about in the books. I had we could just call it guidance at this point. And before I left this meeting with guidance, which I perceived at the time to be a UFO, but I'm like, maybe I made that up. So it sort of made sense to me doing it. But I was talking to guidance and I said, well, how do you get from here to Alpha Centauri? We can't do that. It's a long, and we're thinking about getting there. How do you go to Alpha Centauri so fast? And he said, well, you wouldn't understand. I'm like, okay, granted, I can't understand this. It's very strange to me that you can travel from here to Alpha Centauri and back again. Maybe because you're wired to my brain or my thoughts, you know what language I have and what things I do understand. Perhaps you could explain it to me with that. And I seem to have convinced my guidance at that point in time and said, well, do you know what a Rubik's Cube is? I happen to have one right here.
Yeah.
I said, yes, I know what a Rubik's Cube is. And he said, well, imagine on a Rubik's Cube, there are different periodic tables. Do you know what periodic tables are? And I said, oh, yeah, I've took, science in college and chemistry and everything. So I know what the periodic table is. He says, well, imagine for this explanation, on each surface is a whole set of different periodic tables. And so how do we get to Alpha Centauri? Well, you see, you just twist them. And now they don't match anything anymore. And it just, you are there. It's not like you have to do anything. This is Alpha Centauri here. Now, I have to skip over something in this explanation, and that is 10 years later, I asked the question in my brain. I said, wait a minute. When you showed me that, you said this one's Alpha Centauri and didn't take any space or time to go there. I just figured out there are other spaces that have now changed too. And instantly popped up in my brain. He said, yes, I've been waiting for you to ask that question. And I'm like really embarrassed, like I found out something. And the basic thing that was said in that conversation was you just have to stop talking about go that direction for a long, long time. There's no such thing as directions, and there's no such thing as time. And my mind is still cracking on that. Okay, you go there, but it's not there. It's you go here, and it doesn't take any time because there is no space and time. And I'm like everybody else that we talk about in that realm, I'm also eating dinner and saying, I wonder if you can really do that. So it's a problem for us in this world because we do look out at the moon or the sun or the Mars that we're now going to go visit, and they're a long ways away because it takes time to get there. And my guidance was saying, oh, no, 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 no. You got to get that kind of thinking out of your head because that's not really how it works in reality. So, and I don't think they mean physical reality.
Yeah. Yeah, and this reminds me of several people talking about these insights. Let me call it insights. And I had heard it over years and years. And we need to use the same words. We don't have different words. We try to express this in our language. And now that we are talking, I think we agree on a certain meaning for things we share, right? And I was not able to understand the same meaning like 10 years ago or something. They, all the time, they were talking and telling people and trying to show it. And I could not understand it because I needed to get to the same point through experience in order to understand it.
Yes.
In order to, yes, he was telling the same stuff for 20 years and now I get it. Right?
Uh-huh.
So experience is one of the ways to get there, and
Yes.
brings me back to remote viewing, which is one of several probably experience you can have personally, not just observing other people like, oh, Joe is a good viewer, like doing it and having the first-hand experience of wow. Yeah, I cannot go out of my door and believe in the same world again. Yeah. So yeah, and telling stories is also a good way to put things that you want to tell in a frame. For
Yes.
and you have this. Yeah, I feel an understanding. I cannot really express it, but it's like a seed you plant and then it can grow. Yeah. Okay, I was impressed when I read the book the first time. I was again impressed when I
That
read
one's
it.
better.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just with me or other people who read a lot of books. You read it. I could not tell you which part of what's in my brain is in which book right now. It's just too
Right.
much. And then I came across it.
That's well said. That is very well said because that's what guidance would have you say. It is not over there. It's not in one book, and it doesn't take you time to read all the books. It's something you're absorbing, and it becomes one in you. and you
Mhm.
get to share it with others because you're a publisher.
Yeah, and this is what I can contribute to
Yes,
in
yes.
making it available. And we can also mention that there's a second book coming. Your original intention was to extend this book by another chapter
Mhm.
talking about the UFO, or you would say UAP now, sessions. And then we discovered it is another 200 pages if we just put it in this book, with a side-by-side transcript, not only showing the stuff, but transcribing it, making it readable for people. And so the decision was made to just put it in another book. And we are working on this now. So, in this regard, what led you to the decision to publish the project 8,200 stuff?
Yeah, this guy that I told you about, Jonathan, I guess is his name. He's looking around for where I set that down. I don't see it. I just sent you a guy's name and said we need to make sure he gets recognition.
Yeah, John knows.
Okay. He told me that the work done by Pat Price was he didn't have anything he had. And Pat Price said that he did some UFO stuff, but I don't have any information.
Mm.
And afterwards, I approached him at the Sci-Fest thing and said, I have all the information. I have the original transcripts. I this and this and this and this. And he said, well, I don't have it. And I said, no, you don't understand. I have it. I will give it to you. And he said, well, okay. And so I sent the stuff to him and I sent pictures of the places that were described and so forth and so on. And he created this typewritten translation from what he could pull from the scratches and the misspellings and so forth and so on of Pat Price's own
Mm.
writings and translated them. It's not a translation, but it's a his concept of what was said there. And he asked me, well, should I pass this around? And I said, it's up to you. You could show them the thing that you wrote and so forth and so on. And the more I thought about it, there was interest. People were writing, oh, but I heard that so and so, and I heard that this, and I heard that that. And guidance was telling me maybe people ought to know. And since I had all the transcripts about this, and there's all these new things going on in our government about trying to disclose different things going on, and they show pictures of TV of unidentified objects, and there's also these, screwy things that you can find online where people are talking craziness, but I actually had evidence, on a government project that I'd done and so forth and so on. So that's when I first said, well, I could put a chapter in the back of the other book. And more I got into it, and the more I had to say, you said, this could be another book. And so it has become another book.
Yeah.
And it was just something that I knew about. And I don't come to any conclusions myself as an author saying, oh, look what this really happened. Oh, my goodness, this is today. No, I just describe what I know about it and let other people decide about the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when I heard about this project, I think a few years ago, it was told that only 3 people have the full transcripts, including
Mhm.
you. And now we're sitting here and transcribing this stuff, and it was really, for example, we took a Bill's session, and then I talked to Bill and went through all the stuff with Bill, and he's probably the best person to ask about his handwriting.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah, same as Paul and who else? Yeah, okay, male. No, not other, but yeah.
O'Reilly.
Yeah, Charlene. So we will have a full transcript of all the writing.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
hope that as people come along, they will recognize the structure of the Ingo Swann CRV thing on some of the people and some of the free flow kind of ERV thing from Joe, and they can look back and forth and say what you're getting, how they're all trying to explain what they're perceiving and drop off a little bit. There's one, I'm trying to remember to tell you something, and I want to step away from the subject so I don't forget. So to say, I got to call her back and tell her about this. I'm sending you a PowerPoint presentation of Joe McMoneagle and the work he did in lucid dreaming and remote viewing while he's doing lucid dreaming. And it's just a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So the deal is that there's no talking on there and there's nobody explaining what's really going on there. Because when I would talk to this about people, I was there on stage talking to them and telling about this and telling about that. So if you can figure out how we can watch this and then I can you can record like you're doing now, and I can narrate what's going on now and how Joe was supposed to get up and walk down the hall and he was supposed to do this. That explanation isn't there, but I can describe the procedures and show what happened after that. So
yeah, this would be doable.
well, take a look at it first and you'll say
And then
this and this. Well, how did he get from
commented
this to there?
session.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Okay. So I will be traveling for the next 2 weeks, and then we can continue with it. And maybe we have time to meet.
Okay. I know I could show you if we meet, I could show you and tell you about it right there. Then you have to remember all that when you write it up.
Or record it.
Yeah, right. One or the other.
Okay, good. So then we have announced this new book now, and we'll come back to another conversation later about more interesting topics. And I think the same way we created this website for this book, we can also do a website for the other book and have all this stuff in one place.
Okay.
Yeah. You never know where technology leads. I believe 20 years ago, you were thinking, oh, great, CD-ROM, it's lasting forever. And now we have the CD-ROM. I had a hard time to find a drive for my laptop because we just don't use it anymore.
Yeah.
And so you never know what happens with the internet in 20 years. Let's see.
When technology's moving pretty fast.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Skip.
You're quite welcome.
Yeah. And hope to see you again soon.
Yes.